I'm Vanessa Ruck, the girl on a bike. I'm here in the Himalayas with Royal Enfield on an epic adventure. Now, coming out here to the Himalayas on a motorcycle is something that is a bucket list item for many people. It's certainly been one for me. But like all adventures, there's always things that you should be aware of and know about. And so in this video, I'm going to give you some of my top tips, things to think about, things to know about, what to pack, things to help you with the planning, all designed to make sure that you have the best adventure you possibly can out here in India. Now, if there's anything I missed in the video or you think you should add, let me know in the comments. Please hit subscribe, and I really hope that you enjoy this video. And I can tell you firsthand that this is one of the most beautiful countries as far as scenery and riding that I've ever been in. Just look at this background. There are absolutely incredible roads and mountain passes and scenes and variations of places that you can go around this area in India. Now, there's one challenge in that, is that Google Maps, even OS maps, there doesn't seem to be a perfectly accurate, up-to-date map that works for this area. So what we've been doing and what my recommendation is to triangulate. Talk to people that you know and trust, that have been places, understand where they went, what they've done. Also look at Google Maps, also look at maps, OS maps, printed maps, online maps, and use them to triangulate your data to plot your route. Now, there are bikes that have inbuilt nav systems. You could find that they could be quite complicated to plot, so I've decided to use a Garmin GPS where we can put in quite detailed waypoints. Even that is not always foolproof. Right now is a really lovely example. We've ridden about 15 minutes in the wrong direction out of town. Thankfully, we stopped here at this beautiful scene to take some images and realised, hang on a minute, we're going the wrong way, so we're going to go back round. So just be really close and hot on your navigation, because you can have some really long days here. The maps don't necessarily tell you the conditions of the roads that you're going to be facing. Google might say it's a 2-hour ride, and the reality is that you're on absolute gravel and technical hairpins, and it's more like 5 hours. So just do your research and plan your days accordingly, and plan to expect some long days and contingency. So make sure you've got some snacks and water with you, and you should be good. There's lots of different options for motorcycles. Now, obviously, there is a massive heritage, feel-good, lovely, bubbly, historic thing about having a Royal Enfield. There are different ranges of Royal Enfields. You've got the older ones. The Bullet was sort of the original bike that people were doing the Himalayas on. And then the heritage of the Himalayan came out when Royal Enfield realised that people were taking a Bullet and modifying it to be more suitable for the mountains. And then we went, well, why don't we just make a bike that's made for the mountains, which is exactly what we're on here. Super reliable, solid, robust, literally made for the Himalayas. But we're at 5,000 meter altitude right now. Sorry, I got a bit excited talking too fast. I've got to remember to keep oxygen going. There are different ranges of bikes that you can get in quality and ages, and when you're going up onto these mountain passes to 16, 17, 18,000 feet, they are really dangerous, unforgiving places to be. And we have unfortunately come across quite a few people that have had breakdowns on some of the older bikes that are getting towards the less reliable end of their lives. And I will constantly think about one of the guys we particularly saw. There was absolutely nothing we could do to help him, and we ended up just having to leave him, but he was pushing down off the mountain. There were lots of other trucks around, so I'm sure he got some help, but it's a very cold, bleak place to be, and I really would encourage you to make sure you get a rental that's going to really minimise that risk. So we've got a really cool example of a roadside fix here. This bike, so it's a slightly older Royal Enfield, the swing arm nut failed through the bolt yesterday, and the guys, heroes, have managed to do a roadside fix and managed to kind of nurse it 170 kilometres to where we're staying now. So there's a ratchet strap on here holding the swing arm in and tight, utilising the frame. And then this side is even more impressive. You have a stone that they've wedged in to replace the nut, and then use ratchet straps to then hold that stone in. So the wheel is wobbly, but at least the wheel is in place. Make sure you're carrying spares, make sure you're doing your daily maintenance, and really consider what bike you're going to trust going out in there. And sometimes a little bit saving on the money, you're playing with your life. So worth thinking about it. Homestays are a really integral part of coming around this mountain range. There are no Holiday Inns or Radissons or hotels. You're basically coming into the love and open arms of local families who have made areas of their homes for guests to come and stay. Now, with that, it means that it is very basic. So I just want to help prepare you for what you're going to expect. Some nights you won't have running water. Some nights you won't have hot water, no showering. Sometimes you won't have electricity. We're in really, really out there rugged terrain, and villages have power cuts. So I'd suggest bringing power banks if you need to bring things to charge, and they will always have drinking water, so you don't have to worry about the basics of food and water. But be prepared to not be able to necessarily wash. Now, an easy way to get around that is to have a pack of baby wipes in your bag, so you can at least wipe your face and your armpits and your smelly bits and freshen yourself up. And then sleeping is another thing worth mentioning about. Some of the places we've stayed, it's felt like you're sleeping on a plank of wood with some fluffy sheets. There have been some less comfortable nights and some more comfortable nights. The one we're in right now, which is the Des Kit in Nyoma, Des Kit Eco Lodge, has been the nicest one we found. We've got a hot shower, electricity, they've even got curtains. It's like plush homestay. And we always ask for loads of bedding because it's freezing cold as well. There's no heating in these places. And so you can see here, I've got blanket, massive blanket. Worth mentioning with the blankets, know how cold you feel and ask them before you go to bed, because you're not going to be able to find someone. I did have one night where I used my spare fuel canister from the bike and filled it up with hot water to make a hot water bottle. But these are not frequently washed blankets, so I'm just sleeping in some clothes to make it a little bit more hygienic. But you might want to consider bringing one of those really lightweight silk sleeping bag liners if you're a bit funny about sleeping in blankets that lots of other people have slept in. I'm probably not selling this experience that much, but honestly, there's a really rugged, basic level of this kind of adventuring that somehow makes it just exactly what it should be as far as coming to these areas in the Himalayas. You wouldn't want a fancy hotel here. It would just ruin the whole scene. And sometimes you just got to jump in with the culture, and this is a beautiful way to do it, supporting the local communities. So, make sure you're warm. One thing you definitely need to get used to is sitting on the floor. So if you're not able to sit cross-legged, I recommend doing a little bit of stretching before you come to the Himalayas, especially if you're going to do homestay. I actually quite like it. I'm wondering why we have furniture at home. Alex is less comfortable than me though.
And I can't even sit cross-legged, so I need to do yoga.
You do. Oh, we just got power. Hey, there's lights.
Show you the kitchen.
You can see the kitchen and the food. And so we've just got some lovely rice and some kind of dal, and then we've got some chapatis in here, which looks super good. I'll pop these up on the table so we can all eat.
No puppy tonight.
No puppy. Puppy to puppy.
Puppy to puppy.
Do you want to put one on Annika's plate, please?
So we flew into Leh, and we were pre-warned in advance that flying into Leh, because of the military activity and the proximity to the Chinese border, they are quite strict on some technology coming in. They are massively not fans of drones and GPS. From my understanding, it doesn't mean that you can't bring them, but you have quite a high risk of them confiscating them. So I'd recommend you do your research, maybe look into whether you need to get some kind of permit or etc., or just don't bring them to avoid the risk of losing your technology. What I ended up doing is organising on the ground to have a GPS to borrow, so I didn't have to have the faff of bringing that in. And it's just something to think about when you're travelling to these places. Everywhere in the world has different regulations, and here it's hot military activity, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of the military.
Before you head off on your adventure, you're going to need to make sure you've got SIM coverage on your device. Now, most international network SIM cards are not going to work properly here across the Himalayas.
I guess because of the military activity, they're quite locked down on the telecommunication system, so you're going to have to get yourself a local SIM. Now you're going to need that local SIM for your permits and also to give to the various checkpoints that you're going to meet as you go around the area riding and you're getting stopped by the post controls. So in places like Leh, there are lots of places like Artel that sell SIMs, and you can go and get one for a really reasonable amount of money. So not much money, in case that was a weird backwards way of talking, with a decent lump of data to use every day that will last for, say, a month. And for that, you're going to need your passport and your visa for coming into India. But it's something that you're going to need because you're going to need a phone number for the legal logistics of moving around, and also for your safety should something happen to you out there on the mountain pass. At least you can try and call someone. Know what I heard you're going to call though, because there's no AA or breakdown coverage out here, that's for sure. Another thing you've got to have is make sure you've got some tools on the bike with you in case something does go wrong. So our Himalayans come with a Royal Enfield toolkit which does the majority of stuff on the bike, but we also always carry a little bit more stuff like metal putty, wire, tentacles, slings, chain links, wire for wire locking, and I've got a really nice example right now as to why this is important. We had a bolt vibrate out, and there you can see we've got some wire lock that's going to hold that in place, and will enable us to keep going without a problem. So, pack your tool roll. When you land here, make sure you get yourself to a chemist in one of the bigger towns. The smaller town chemists don't seem to have them, and get yourself some oxygen. Whether you are a seasoned altitude person or not, I really strongly recommend you carry 1, 2, 3, depending on how many people you are. We're 3 people, so we've had 3 of these this week. This is a tin of oxygen, and yes, I'm making it look really light because it is light. It's lighter than oil. Comes with a little nozzle that goes on the top. You're literally gonna put it over your mouth, spray, inhale. They recommend you do about 20 breaths if you're starting to feel a bit low on oxygen, a bit lightheaded, any of the signs of altitude sickness. This cell has about 250 puffs in it. I think it's more like 150 puffs, but maybe we've got big lungs. But this is something that could change the likelihood of your continuing versus ending in hospital. Get yourself some oxygen tanks. Bring them with you. I've talked about altitude a lot, and I'm going to emphasize it even more because it seriously can completely end your trip very easily. One of the English guys we've met this week ended up leaving the trip after day 3 and having to go and spend 2 days in hospital, and altitude sickness is really serious. So some of the things that you can do to try and help yourself set up for the best scenario putting your body through the altitude is to make sure that at the beginning of your trip you have at least 2 days of calm. Flying into Leh, you're coming straight into 12,500 feet. You don't get any climatization as you come up, and so your body has to go straight into adapting to that altitude. Drink loads of water, eat, sleep, and don't do anything. Don't be tempted to go for a hike or a run or go out on the bikes. Just rest and let your body adapt. Or altitude adjustment is literally your body changing and adapting, and there's blood cell things that happen, oxygen levels, there's all kind of stuff, and if it goes wrong and you start to lose the oxygen levels in your blood, your organs, it can be pretty catastrophic. The next thing to do is thinking about your route plan over the length of your trip. So we've done a 8-day trip here of 8 days riding, and we've progressively gone higher and lower. By going up, your body gets into the altitude, and then coming back down, your body is then adjusting to be able to handle that altitude more effectively. So every time you go up and come down, you should be able to then go up a little bit more and come down, up. So we didn't go straight in and do the world's highest motorizable road on day 1 or 2 of this trip. We waited to day 5 to give us lots of time to do that up and down. Plan your route according to making yourself the most success rate for altitude. So a altitude thing to think about is your oxygen level is really important. You're meant to sit around 80 oxygen particles per something, whatever the little finger thing tells you. We've just popped into the local chemist, and the lovely team here are just checking our oxygen levels because
catching it early and having oxygen can prevent you then getting really ill. Dan, one of the English guys here, was in this morning and he had 2 hours on oxygen because he dropped to about half of the level he should have been at. So he's caught it early, which is good. But recommendation, if you spot a chemist and you're not feeling great, it's worth just popping in, getting a little sensor on your finger and checking what your oxygen's at. And it's amazing what some really deep diaphragmatic breaths can do. So diaphragm is below your lungs, and that's the muscles that helps you really expand your chest. Think about the yoga, big in and out, and you can get that not oxygen, you can get that oxygen levels up pretty quick.
We are day 7. Before we leave Pangong So Lake, I thought it was probably worth taking a quick moment to let you know what sort of kit I'm wearing, because so often when we travel and go to these new places, we're like, what's the weather doing? And here in the Himalayas, the weather fluctuations are crazy. We've been from -4 all the way up to 18 degrees, and kit-wise on a motorcycle, that is a huge difference. So I'm going to be doing a full YouTube video which will take you through everything in a lot more detail with really, really important things to think about. But briefly in this one, I'm going to give you a couple of tips. First one is layers, because you can add, you can remove, and as the day fluctuates, the mountain altitude fluctuates, the temperatures, you can adjust. So I always go for technical base layers. One rule on a motorcycle: I don't care what type of riding you're doing, never, ever, ever wear cotton. It is the worst material. It sucks moisture, it holds moisture, and that makes humidity and coldness that sticks to your body. Get rid of all cotton and get yourself some technical layers. You'll actually find that you are cooler and warmer with the right technical layers. So to emphasize that, when I do my extreme desert racing, I will wear full leggings, full arms, underneath my kit. Counterintuitive really, you'd think less layers would be cooler, but technical layers do exactly what they say on the job. So I've got 2 base layers on at the moment. They are both technicals, and then I've got an array of things in front of me. So more technical layers that hold air, pockets of air are really important. This is a really, really life-saving one that I've had this week. We are early June here in the Himalayas, so it's very early in the season. The snow is still melting at the top, and so a heated jacket is a fantastic way to give you a wider breadth of temperatures. This is the ectothermal from Moscow. It is a thermal jacket in itself, so it's a good layer before I've even plugged it in. And then literally 2 bolts on your battery, you can wire in the pigtail that takes this, and it has a medium warm and hot setting, and this has been life-saving this week. I then have body armour that obviously I throw on because you do not want to be getting on a motorcycle without protection, and then I go into my outer jacket. Now, because of the range of temperatures and the wind chill, I've chosen to wear a jacket that is waterproof and abrasive the whole time. And that is my outer shell. And then you've got to think about your hands. Hands take a lot of wind chill, so I've got a lighter mid-season pair and then a full waterproof winter season. Helmet, I'm wearing goggles and an enduro helmet. I think it would be easy to think that a full face would be better for the temperature, but once you're at high altitude doing some of the more technical off-road stuff, you really want the airflow. So I had a snood up, and I find the goggle and helmets is absolutely perfect. Waterproof boots are a good idea. Mine aren't really fully waterproof, but I would recommend bringing waterproof socks. And then I've of course got base layers underneath there. They have vents if it gets hot, and I've got some waterproof trousers that I throw over the top, which are who they made by Moscow. So they just go on over the top if it's cooler. And that's what I'm wearing. So I'm going to get kitted up and we're going to head on to day 7. We're heading north and west, and it's just going to be an absolutely epic, another day adventuring in the Himalayas. And look at the mountains! As we summit our final mountain pass on this adventure, it's probably worth sharing with you when is a good time to actually come and do the Himalayas. Now, we are in early June, and I would say that's the earliest you want to come. Some of the mountain passes that we've done are only just snow cleared, and the temperatures we faced are -4. Any earlier than that, you face not being able to get through the roads and being really, really cold. It's absolute mayhem up here. There's Rocky Monster. We hear you!
Then you've got the season where it's going to get warmer through the summer months, and I would say October is where the temperatures start to really drop off again, and you're going to face more and more snow. So it's really those middle months of the year that you want to be starting to plan your trip to come here. The mountains here have lots of really paved options. Like, there is a lot of tarmac. I think gradually the off-road ADVing here is decreasing, but there is some really cool little bits of off-roading that you can find if you keep your eyes sharp. So up behind me you can see a long stretch that goes all the way up almost to that main summit, one below, where you can off-road. We went up it earlier, we've come down it now. And twisty hairpin roads are beautiful, but sometimes mixing in an off-road shortcut is a really fun way to add an extra element of adventure to your day. And when you're looking at a really long day like we're on today, cutting some of your mileage down. So if you look that way, you'll see the amount of road that we've just skipped with that little shortcut. So the benefit of the Royal Enfield Himalayan is that it is good on the road, off the road. Built for all roads, built for no roads. So a pretty important tip if you're going to come here and do a road trip is the fact that you do want to be relatively self-sufficient. There are lots of little villages and towns that you can get food in, but on some of the routes, especially the route that we're doing this week, that isn't reliable and they're not necessarily going to be open, and so we are making sure that we've got protein bars, nuts, snacks, some dried fruit, and so if we can't get lunch or water anywhere in the day, we're good with our camelbacks and our snack supplies. Coming to the Himalayas has got a lot of different temperatures, so you're obviously going to be thinking about all the kit that you're wearing, but your feet is a really critical one. It's similar to my Iceland top tips, where you are likely to get wet feet. Yesterday on the really high mountain pass, it was chucking down with rain, it was icy, and our boots probably could have poured out when we got home. Now, homestays are very basic. There was a little fire that we were able to sit down to warm up, but we absolutely couldn't take our kit in there, which means I've got very wet boots going on now. I haven't managed to dry my socks overnight, but thankfully I've got 2 pairs of wool socks. My recommendation, if I was to do this trip again, is to make sure that you have waterproof socks, because waterproof socks going into a wet boot means that your feet stay dry. So, packing list, waterproof socks. This is not going to be pleasant.
Okay, checkpoints are something you're going to get a lot of as you ride around the Himalayas and India. Now, as an English person coming here, I had to get a visa. You're also going to have to get permits for the various areas of India and the Himalayas that you're going to ride through. It's really important that you get those. You're going to see signs like this. You've got to stop. You're going to have to get your visa out, your passport and your permit. When you get your permits, we got our permits done for about 1,000 rupees and they were done within a day. Make sure you get multiple photocopies of those permits, because a lot of these checkpoints are wanting to keep that for your records. As long as you've got those 3 documents, you'll stop, hand them over, they'll write some stuff down and you'll be on your way.
Route planning is going to be a really critical part of your adventure. Now, I'm going to share the route that we've done, which is an 8-day route, but there's loads of options out there on the villages, the towns, the mountain passes that you want to do. So do your research before you come, but make sure when you're doing that planning, you work out the fuel stops. And I would suggest having a couple of fuel stop options each day and go with a bike that has a pretty hefty fuel range. The Himalayan has a massive 17-litre fuel tank and does about 70 miles per gallon, so they're really good for covering the distance between fuel stops here. We've had to do a 30-kilometre detour on our route plan just to make sure that we have enough fuel to do the next leg today. Really plan your fuel stops. We are also carrying in the back of my Moscow panniers 2 small 2-litre extra bits of fuel that will just give us a little bit more should we come to it, the worst happen and we run out. Plan, and plan that your plan won't work, because that is what happens on an adventure, to have backups. So that is a wrap on my top tips, things that you need to know to come here to northern India in the Himalayas and adventure on a motorcycle. Let me know if you think there are any points that I've missed, anything that you'd add, or if you've got any questions in the comments below. This video is of course part of a series of videos that I've done while I've been out here in India adventuring on the Royal Enfield Himalayan.
I really hope you have enjoyed it. If you really enjoy my content and would like to support me, I do have a Patreon account, and just a small bit of change every month goes a long way to helping me keep doing what I'm doing, editing and sharing all of this experience with you. I'm Vanessa Ruck, the girl on a bike. I really hope this video helps you have an epic Himalayan adventure as well.